Well, thanks for joining us. We are going to be talking with Paul Cox. He's a full-time freelance cartoonist. He's the artist behind the popular Reftoons drawings, where he depicts figures from church history in fun and thought-provoking ways. Additionally, he has several books, including Pilgrims' Progress, A Poetic Journey, as well as a Baptist Catechism, an illustrated Baptist Catechism, and now he has the illustrated Westminster Shorter Catechism. You can check out his work at reftoons.com and, of course, on social media. So, Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, as we start, could you share a little bit about yourself and your family and how you got into your work as a professional cartoonist?
Yeah, so I live in Wisconsin with my wife, Stephanie. We've been married for 16 years, going on 17 in July. We have 4 kids, ages 6, 8, 9, and 12. It's hard to keep those straight.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
And so my path to becoming a cartoonist, is that what you want to?
Yeah, so how did you get into that line of work?
So it's a long, it's a long process. And it's a long story. So I'll try to shorten it as best I can. So I graduated from college in 2006. I went to a private university that was affiliated with the denomination I was a part of at the time. And they had a good art program. So I went there. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my art. I just knew I wanted to do art. Ever since I was a kid, I said I wanted to be a cartoonist when I grow up. And so I graduated in 2006 with a general art degree. Didn't really know what to do with it, what I could do with it. The professor, one of my professors, was encouraging me not to go the route of being a cartoonist. And so he told me that I would be living in a garbage can, or living out of a garbage can or a dumpster if I went that route. And he really wanted to push me towards, the focus of that art department was really to push out graphic designers and art teachers, of which I didn't really want to be either. So after college, I was married. We were married in college, and then after college, we moved to Wisconsin, and I found whatever job I could find to support my family at the time, which was working at a deli doghouse, making Italian beef sandwiches. So that moved into getting a job as a screen printer at a screen print shop, printing T-shirts. And then I finally, in 2009, I landed an actual art job doing technical drawings for scroll saw woodworking patterns. That lasted about 3 or 4 months, and then I got laid off from that job because their customer base was dwindling, and they just I think they just ended up shutting down the company. So I got laid off, couldn't find any more work. And so scouring the internet on job boards and all that stuff, I came across Craigslist, and I saw that they had this little section called creative gigs. And I was like, what's that? So I clicked on it. There are all kinds of jobs for like freelance illustration, freelance art, all kinds of different things. And this kind of opened up a world of possibilities and opportunities for me to explore. So I ended up landing a few jobs through Craigslist, actually, just doing freelance illustration from home. And I've been able to build that up. I no longer work through Craigslist, but I have some clients that I work for as a cartoonist, doing what I love. And I've been doing that for about 12 years now. Working full-time freelance illustration.
That's great to hear. So you do a variety of things as a cartoonist. I think, those that'll be watching this are going to be most familiar with your work with Reftoons. So how would you describe what Reftoons is, and how did it begin to be kind of its own thing that you were focused on?
Yeah, so with Reftoons, I was going through a crisis of theology, you might say. So my theology was shifting into more Calvinistic, Reformed, and I didn't want to just keep it to myself. I thought, like, all these old dead guys that I'm reading, they have such rich stuff that everybody needs to be reading it. so I had this idea of kind of merging my love of theology and my love of comics, and kind of sharing what I'm learning through this process of my theological shift. And so Reftoons, I actually had the idea for it like 1 or 2 years before I started. I started in 2017. Was the first post I posted on Facebook. Yeah, but like I had the idea a couple of years before that, and just kind of tossing it around in my head, did a couple sketches, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, and decided in 2017 just to go for it. And so I had done a few other side projects aside from my freelancing work. I had like my own personal comics, like probably the more popular one was Dad versus Nature, which was about my adventures in fatherhood. So I had previously already been trying to put out some comic strips out there, and this idea for Reftoons just kind of merged that love of doing the comic strips plus the added benefit of sharing solid biblical foundations.
Do you remember, was there a particular post that you put out there, or was it right from the start that you realized that this kind of really resonated with people online?
Yeah, I think so. The very first 2 Reftoons comics were a little more comedic in nature. And so it wasn't really like the serious, in-depth stuff that you see from me now. But it was more like the first one was just a joke about Martin Luther pounding on the door of Wittenberg with his nail and hammer, and then a line of kids behind him trick-or-treating. And then the next one was Charles Spurgeon and his pancake breakfast. But the one after that was
sure, yep,
where I started getting into a more serious subject matter, which was John Owen with a bunch of fresh graves, burying his sins, basically mortifying his sin, and the quote was, "Kill sin, or sin will be or it will be killing you." And then I think that there was a kind of a shift in the direction that I wanted to go with Reftoons, and I feel like that one really, like, I saw the reactions to that one, and I just felt like I needed to go a little more serious and less joking, although I still throw in some more joking, but just to share that deep theology. It can be very deep, and I think using these images, these comic images, kind of help bring it to life.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a little bit that you went through this theological shift that kind of coincided with the birth of Reftoons, and you're often drawing these figures from church history, Calvin and Spurgeon and Luther and a number of Puritans and others. So what draws you personally to these men, and how have you benefited from the work of these reformers and these pastors and Puritans and other theologians?
Yeah, so I guess what draws me to them is their theology and how they articulate the doctrines of the faith. It really helps, just the way that they write and the depth of how they write about the doctrines found in Scripture is almost like they're just mining for gold and presenting the jewels for us to see. And so I guess it really draws me into the Scriptures and pushes me to mine each passage for the riches that are contained in them.
So what is the process look like for you? Are you reading these works, and then when you highlight something, you're thinking in terms of what you can illustrate and cartoons you can make? How do you come up with the ideas for what it is you're going to draw? Yeah,
a lot of what I draw is based on what I'm reading at the time. So if you see like a lot of J.C. Ryle in like 1 month, then I'm probably reading a lot of J.C. Ryle at that time, or same with Spurgeon. But so a lot of it comes from like things that I'm reading, and I'll underline quotes as I'm reading and think, oh, that might make a good tune. That would be a good truth to illustrate. And other times I just scour the interwebs looking for quotes that may work well as an illustration, and then I have to try to make sure I vet each quote, make sure it's it was actually quoted by the person that
actually accurate,
they're saying
yeah.
is yeah. So that takes
a lot of things
that
attributed to Spurgeon out there.
I know. Yeah. I had to go back and put on one of my Spurgeon ones. It was I actually wrote commonly attributed to Spurgeon because I couldn't actually find where it was. So yeah, that takes a lot more work than just picking up one of these guys' books and reading through it, because you know where it's coming from then. But finding quotes online can be pretty hazardous sometimes.
Now, I've seen some of the videos that you've put on Instagram where you're kind of showing yourself drawing these things on screen live. Are you purely a digital cartoonist, or are you sketching these things out on a notebook first to get your ideas down, or how does that look for you?
I do both. So when I first started, all of the tunes were drawn on paper, inked on paper, and colored on paper. Well, actually, I take that back. The first ones weren't colored on paper. It was after I got some special markers that I started coloring some of them. But it was kind of a break from my full-time freelance work, where I am completely digital all the time for everything I do for my freelance work. So Reftoons, when I started, it was kind of a break from being digital all the time and staring at a screen all the time. So it was nice to get that raw material, paper and pen and pencil, and just draw on that. But then I kind of morphed into doing both, so digital and traditional. So it just it really depends on how I'm feeling at the time. If I want to, if I think I can draw something without having to sketch too much, then I'll do it on the paper, because erasing takes a lot out of the paper and takes a lot out of the drawing. So with digital, I can just do layers and remove the layers. So yeah, I do both.
And are there a number of drafts that happen between your first idea to kind of a finished cartoon?
Yeah, I have sketchbooks full of like first, second, third drafts of some of the early comics. And even when I'm sketching on the computer, I'll go through a rough draft, change it, and then I'll maybe scrap the whole thing, try a different layout, different things like that. So yeah, there's a number of changes and revisions that go on throughout the whole process. I start with a very rough sketch. It's basically just shapes, scribbled shapes, and then I slowly add the detail as I get it to where I want it to be as far as composition goes and things like that.
So of all the people that you draw, and again, those that are familiar with, following you on Instagram or anything else, you draw lots of different people, a lot of reformers, a lot of Puritans. Do you have a figure that's the most fun to draw that you really enjoy and kind of come back to again and again?
Yes, and it is Charles Spurgeon.
All right.
He's definitely
I figured that was going to be the answer.
Right. He's definitely my favorite to draw. He has probably some of the most illustratable quotes. He's funny, he's insightful, and he's a hard edge when he needs to be. He also is one of those preachers who kind of not fills the gaps, but like bridges the gaps between all different denominations. And so he's kind of like a lot of people use him and they don't realize he's Calvinist and all that. But he's very illustratable. And I especially love his John Plowman's Pictures books, which is, I think they're subtitled Plain Talk or Plain Speech for Plain Folk or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I was just introducing that to my kids the other day, and they got a kick out of some of those. And very, it's very humorous and very vivid illustrations.
Right. It's almost like Aesop's Fables a little bit.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah, with moral lessons in there and some good sketches. Yeah, he's got John Plowman's Talk and then John Plowman's Pictures are both worth checking out if people aren't familiar with those.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got Reftoons, and as you said, it started at least right out the gate of being probably leaning more towards the fun and funny side, and now you try to give it enough attention to kind of not serious that they're not fun, but you're giving some deeper truths in these good quotes and illustrating concepts. What value do you see in merging sound theology with fun and humor, particularly in this social media age that we live in?
Right. I really think that humor and comics especially, they're a little bit satirical in nature, like using satire, and I feel like that really brings out the truth in a lot of things because it contrasts like something so exaggerated with what the truth is, and I don't know if I explained that understandably or not, but I think that comics and illustrations juxtaposed with words especially really helps drive the concept behind what is trying to be said in the words. I'm a very visual person, so for me personally, it helps me understand concepts better when I have imagery to go along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. One, they're eye-catching, so if people are scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or whatever else and come across this, I think it's going to stop them a little bit longer than just, a quote on a nature background or something. And I think these are wonderful ways to introduce people to some really solid names that they ought to know. They ought to be familiar with, if not regular reading, Thomas Watson, for example, or Calvin or Zwingli or whoever else. And I think it's just a wonderful merging of just the fun of a comic and really introducing these sound theological writers and pastors and theologians, as well as the concepts that they teach. So it seems to be a really good merging of both of those things.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that you have, I want to talk about your catechism books, but could you talk a little bit about your Pilgrim's Progress book that you have?
Yeah, definitely. So my wife and I rewrote The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan as a rhyming poem for kids, and I illustrated it as a children's book, like a children's picture book. So each page kind of has like a 4-line stanza or rhyme. I don't know what the proper word is for that stanza. Maybe each page has a 4-line stanza, and it rhymes, and it goes through a very condensed story. I think it's about 42 pages or 44 pages. So it's very condensed, but we rewrote it, and it's available through H&E Publishing, and also through reftoons.com.
Excellent. Yeah. So definitely worth checking out. Those who would be drawn to your cartoons and figures like Spurgeon and everybody else will obviously probably have a soft spot in their heart for Pilgrim's Progress, and having a means to introduce that to our kids in a way where they can grasp the core elements of the story and keep it fun. And you go from that, and then you can go to like the Dangerous Journey, which is a really, really solid picture format. Some creepy pictures in there, by the way. So maybe not with little kids. and then introducing the full thing. I think that's just a really neat way to keep that classic story at the forefront, and even in our young kids too. So
yeah.
So you have these catechism books as well. For those joining in our conversation here aren't familiar, catechism is just a way of teaching theological truths through questions and answers. So you have the Baptist Catechism, and now you've got coming out the Westminster Shorter Catechism. So could you talk a little bit about what drew you to start these projects and how they could benefit parents using them?
Yeah, so I love catechisms. I think they're super important for kids and adults. Coming in to understand theology a little more than I had growing up. I mean, catechisms were very useful to me because it kind of brought out the basic doctrines of the Bible in question and answer format that was easily understandable and kind of systematic. It just went through like, who is God? Who are we in relation to God? What is sin? And all this, just build all the doctrines building on each other. And it's very important. It was very important for me to understand deeper theology. And so I've illustrated 2 catechisms, the Baptist and the Westminster Catechism. They're both very similar. So I was actually able to use a lot of the same imagery for both of them, but some of the imagery is very different. Just because the Westminster is geared toward Presbyterian, the Baptist is obviously geared towards Baptists, and they each have their own differing theological views when it comes to baptism and some of the other things. Westminster has 107 questions. The Baptist Catechism has 114 questions. So there's little difference there. So I wanted to see more solid theological material for children. I hadn't seen much of it out there, and I hadn't really seen any illustrated catechisms. Although after I started these, I did find that I think in the 60s or 70s, maybe 80s, one of those years, there was a guy named Vic Lockman who illustrated the Westminster Shorter Catechism, and he did it in comic strip form, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I just wanted to see something out there, and these are both in the public domain. They were written in the 1600s, so there was no copyright I needed to get for them. So I was able to just find some of the original texts, put them into this format, and illustrate them. And so I decided to go the self-publishing route just to get them out there. And so now they're available through Reftoons.com. And right now I'm actually doing a pre-order for the Westminster. The Baptist is already done and printed. I have one second. Right here, Baptist Catechism. Oh, it's backwards on my screen, but and it's hardcover, and the Westminster is going to be just like this, except with different cover, different look on the inside. So that the Westminster is available for pre-order right now through Reftoons.com, and those pre-orders will help us determine how many books to get and help us to be able to pay for the printing. So
excellent. Yeah, I encourage people to check those out. I actually need to pick up. We're doing the Baptist Catechism in our house and have been for many weeks now through what we do at our church, and encouraging that during the week. So I still need to pick up my Baptist Catechism, and just having seen the kind of the preview images there is really helpful to have a visual. I think especially for kids, to have a visual to go along with the answer, because sometimes the answers, you were mentioned, it was written in the 1600s, so as valuable as it is, sometimes the answer is a little bit unwieldy.
Yeah.
So having that visual can be a really big help.
Yeah, and I kept the Old English in there because I didn't want to mess with trying to translate the Old English into modern English, and so I just kept it the same. So it's pretty meaty.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. A catechism is a great thing. It's unfortunate that it's often an unknown tool in people's arsenal, particularly parents. But it seems with some things it's maybe getting a bit of a resurgence, and that's a great thing. So it's nice to have a couple of tools like this to help people in that, and maybe help things go a little bit smoothly, and add this element of fun to it as well. I think that's a win all the way around.
Yeah, definitely.
So what do you enjoy most about your Reftoons work?
What do I enjoy most? I really enjoy digging into all the old theological material. I really enjoy wrestling with the questions that come up as I'm reading, questions that I would have probably never known to ask, or ask the scriptures even. As you're reading scripture, you should ask questions: who, what, where, when, why, things like that. But there's other questions like about different doctrines and theology. Like recently, I've been asking questions and about the second commandment, for example. There's a lot of differing views that I found out when I came into the Reformed world. There's a lot of differing views on what constitutes a second commandment violation, and things like that. So reading a lot of these old Puritans and things, they answer some of these questions with their interpretations, and it's good to learn from the past and challenge different ideas that may have been formed in your head through I don't know, I want to say American Christianity.
Yeah.
Commercialized Christianity. But yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoy digging into the old theological material. I think it's so rich. And also another thing I enjoy about my work with RefToons is that last year, Stephanie and I were able to start taking RefToons conferences, setting up a booth at conferences, and through doing that, we've been able to meet a lot of the people that we've interacted with online through our live drawing videos and things like that. And it's just been really fun to put faces to the different people that we interact with online. So that's been fun.
No, it's great. I've seen, especially on your Instagram, where you've drawn some modern day people as well. R.C. Sproul's already passed, but you've got some with him. I was watching one where you were kind of live drawing. I had just skipped ahead in it, and about 10 strokes into the thing, I knew it was Steve Lawson. Have you had any interaction with any of the living people that you've drawn, or has a word got back to you at all, whether they're flattered and enjoyed it, or have you not had a chance to hear back from anybody that you've drawn?
Yeah, I've heard from a few people. I actually got to I've been able to gift some of my original drawings of some of these people. So I did a quote from Tom Askell, and I was able to gift him the original art of that, and he seemed to enjoy it. And then James White, I was able to gift him one that I did of him and Jeff Durbin. But yeah, and I've heard from other people. I've heard from I did one of Bad Vody where he turned into like a Hulk, and I heard from Vody that he enjoyed that one. So
excellent. I don't know if you could say it's hot off the press quite yet, since you're still doing pre-orders on the Westminster. So I know that project is really fresh and recent. But do you have anything in mind, anything on the horizon that you're hoping to do when you get the opportunity?
Yeah, well, so I'd like to continue doing just I call them daily RefToons posts, but I really don't do any new ones every day. I do a new single panel RefToon maybe once a month, twice a month, sometimes not even, just depending on my schedule. But there are a few other projects I'd like to do. I'd like to do some graphic novels, possibly based on people from church history, or even just based on concepts. Like I had this idea for a graphic novel based on John Owen's The Mortification of Sin, but I would turn that into more of like a story form rather than a teaching story. I don't know how to describe that, but it would be more of like a fictional story based on John Owen's Mortification of Sin. So things like that, and just getting back into the single panel comic strips.
Very cool. Now, where should folks go to learn more about you and your work and check out some of these cartoons?
You can go to reftoons.com, or you can find me on all the social medias: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. I'm also on all the alternative social medias. So that would be like Gab, Getter, Parler, anything else. I try to grab the RefToons name.
All
for
the
each
places.
one. Each one that comes up, just in case. So,
yeah, you don't want anybody squatting on the Reftoons name. So.
Right. So,
well, excellent. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for joining us on this episode. Our guest has been Paul Cox of Reftoons. I encourage everyone to check out reftoons.com and especially commend checking out the Illustrated Baptist Catechism and the Illustrated Westminster Shorter Catechism that's coming out soon. So get your pre-orders in. And Paul, can't thank you enough for joining us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.